Let your manna fall from heaven. Shower down your word from up above. Grace and truth are what we're craving. Manifest your blessings and your love. Here with your midday manna.
Science and physical education.
Praise the Lord, and we are so happy to come to you today from First Baptist Church, Bridgetown, Barbados. We are glad that you have tuned in to be with us as we do every Wednesday in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day, right here in the middle of Bridgetown. We are the church in the heart of the city with the city at heart. And I am so pleased to be able to be with you again on this Wednesday for our midday manna. As always, we remind you of the words of Jesus that was spoken first by the prophet Moses, that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So while we often pause for lunch around this time to feed our physical bodies, we also pause for the spiritual bread, and that comes from the Word of God. It is a privilege to be with you, and we're going to have a special program today. Let me tell you, we're going to have two very special guests. One is already here with me. With me is our brother Vincent Smith. He's a member of Family Faith Freedom, but he professionally is an educator, and he is also a fierce apologist. I read an article on him today, a couple days ago, and he certainly decimated, he stripped that subject to shreds, and we would like to talk to him about those very fierce arguments that he put forward that were absolutely formidable. We'd like to speak with him today and to share with you on a hot topic that is very much trending and vocalized in Barbados. And that is the well are being considered one of the safest places in the world in respect of the pandemic of COVID-19. And I know, and you know, that that's not because we have been the best people on earth. You know, and I know, it's not because we got the best government on earth. We thank God for those who are managing our affairs as elected. But you know, that's not the principal reason. The principal reason has been many of you who have been praying, seeking God, interceding. And it's because of His faithfulness. It is because of His mercies. The Bible says, it is because of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed. And they are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. So that's the song I'm going to share with you right now, so that we give God praise right here at the top of the program. And then we are going to be able to share with you on the subject that is on our hearts and on the hearts of all Barbadians across the board, whether they are religious or not, whether they hold to one philosophy or not. It is one that is concerning. So let us give God the praise that is due to His name. Just two verses of this wonderful, wonderful hymn. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, New mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and the peace that endureth. Thine own the presence to cheer and to guide. Strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Oh, great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Praise the Lord. That was Brother Vincent there accompanying me. He said, man, I only sing in the shower. I said, everybody that come on this show gonna sing. Gonna sing, and we gonna sing because we are making a joyful noise unto the Lord. You understand? This is not a concert. This is praise, my brother. So we are grateful that we have our beloved Brother Vincent Smith with us today. Welcome, Brother Vincent.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. Brother Vincent, as I said, is an educator. What are the main subjects you teach at your school, sir?
I teach science and physical education.
All right, that's quite interesting portfolio. How do you combine the two of those easily together? I don't know. But I'll tell you something else about Vincent that we've discovered and I'm very happy about. That scientific mind of his, that intellect that he brings to the table, especially when it comes to discussing the moral values that we espouse as a nation, that he stand up for as a believer in Jesus Christ. I have said to him, you know, you are an apologist. And he looked at me curious because I don't know if he was described that way before. But I'm in my possession, there's an article that Brother Vincent wrote, and I'm going to come to that in a minute. But first I wanted to, let him say what is immediately on his heart as it relates to the current issue that we are facing in Barbados. I'm sure, Brother Vincent, you have seen as we attempt to come out of the pandemic, government is attempting to introduce various fiscal and economic and financial measures that will be able to help us return to a place where we are working, where we're productive, where we're earning income as a nation, and we're grateful for all that government is planning to do. But I think that we have a significant problem that we've run into as it relates to this welcome stamp visa. And particularly in the description where it relates to spouses, because a person can come and work remotely in Barbados, as the act is proclaiming, for a period of 12 months, and they can bring their spouse and they can bring their children. Is that correct? As you understand it? But I think the problem came with the language when Barbados said, as relates to its laws, a spouse would be husband, wife, children. And then there was some pushback on that. And I saw that you begin to write on that. Come on, talk to me as that rolled out to you.
Again, thank you for having me. My major concern was with the anti-discrimination laws that I was hearing about, and I did not get to see it, so I'm not sure. I can't really comment fully on that. I did not read the other document fully as well, but I would begin by saying if we have to be very careful when we're talking about working in the workplace, and we're talking about discrimination in the workplace.
This was the law that followed because the Prime Minister mentioned that that because there will be no discrimination. She will not preside over a government country that would perpetuate discrimination. And she mentioned that the labor law will soon be introduced that will eliminate discrimination in the workplace. She didn't specifically say which category, but now we have seen, of course, the context was sexual orientation.
Right.
And now we have seen a law introduced that would say that you can't discriminate for someone because of their sexual orientation.
Right, and that's where it gets tricky when it comes to LGBT.
Okay.
If the law is going to be anything like what the other workplace legislations are across the world, then we are going to be in for some trouble.
How so?
The LGBT has a peculiar agenda, and they're a peculiar beast. Anti-discrimination laws are useful. We've seen it help in terms of racism and these kind of things.
Okay.
But when we talk about particularly the LGBT, we have to realize that that is just the tip of the iceberg for the LGBT. It's an open door for a number of abuses of the law and abuses of other people's rights and so on. So when you do that, you're going to start to see a number of other things started to follow on as a result of that.
Like what? You're mentioning things like abuses. So you're saying that the LGBTQI, etc. The letters keep adding or changing constantly.
Yes.
You're saying that if anti-discrimination laws include that particular agenda, that it's going to have problems. What kind of problems do you foresee?
For example, you can't just have a law without some kind of teeth. There must be some type of penalties that will come along. I can't just discriminate and then nothing happens to me. What we see happening overseas is that discrimination takes many different forms as far as LGBT is concerned. And it kind of changes and they make it up as they go along. So discrimination is a broad term and people tend to see it in like me referencing racism and these kind of other issues. But when you're dealing with LGBT, they have, you either get fired, you either you are jailed or you're fined for discrimination against the LGBT. Now, what does that discrimination look like? It comes in so many different nuances, if you want to say that. Let me just give you an example. If I'm in the workplace and Bob comes in and says, "Today I'm a woman," right? And then I said, "I'm sorry, Bob, but you are a man." That is discrimination.
So you're saying that he was hired as a man?
The human resource, registering as a man. The pay clerk, registering national insurance as a man.
Okay.
He comes in, but because of this word discrimination, anti-discrimination laws, the LGBT would then say, well, my refusal to simply call him a man is now supported by a female. is now supported by this overarching discrimination law. And they can now manipulate that law to say that I am abusing, I am being discriminatory against them by simply refusing to either agree that he's a male, a female, or to even call him by a female pronoun.
I see.
So it opens a whole can of worms, and you gotta be careful. Discrimination, the word sounds fine, but their understanding of discrimination is going to be very different.
Yes, I think what we are also seeing is that they're using an established value and principle, and riding on the backs of it, they would then introduce their particular agenda, statement, so that it looks as though we are. So when the person hears discrimination, of course, to them it's wrong. It's similar to what's happening in Black Lives Matter right now, if you don't mind me. I don't want to take you off the subject.
No, that's fine.
But in case of Black Lives Matter, for example, you would find that while blacks are demanding that they be represented and that they not be discriminated on the basis of their skin color, right? They are now saying, in the same way, you should not discriminate against me for my choice of sexual orientation. And the two are not the same.
Correct.
So I think I get the point that you're saying, that while they're using the established term discrimination, it really does not measure up to what our full understanding of discrimination is, but as you mentioned, it is being manipulated to be bent towards that.
Yes.
Am I hearing you correctly?
Exactly.
Wonderful. We're joined today by another brother who is going to be sharing with us. And our brother Roger Marshall himself is here, and he is going to be sharing with us, because on this subject, while Vincent's scholarship is profound, we need all of the scholarship we can get. This is another brother. He's the head of Project Probe in Barbados and has mounted many campaign in the media and in various fora to help educate Barbados about those things that are against the Christian values of this nation. And so as we continue this conversation, I want to really pick their brains on this, because we have two gentlemen that have distinguished themselves. They're known to the editors of the papers of this country, and therefore they're going to be able to now help us unpack this so that we understand the subject. So Vincent, you were on a roll there. You were telling us about how persons are using these words, and the laws are going to be used with impunity now, and we have to be aware of how that law is going to be used. And you brought up the issue of discrimination. What else you think would be the problems, the difficulties that will occur as a result if we go ahead with this anti-discrimination law in the workplace?
For example, you won't be able to tell a male teacher he can't come into work in a dress. That would be anti-discriminatory. You didn't think of that, and the government doesn't think of that. The legislators don't think of all these other things that become a part of the legislation that is now going to be tied.
You're
or
an educator
forced
yourself.
into the,
If an educator comes into school in a dress, what?
If a male educator.
Last term, he was Mr. Brown,
Right.
and he shows up this term as Ms. Brown. Simply from an educational perspective, looking at your class, your student, school dynamics, the dynamics that exist. What do you think? What does that say to your mind from your perspective as an educator?
Well, automatically it's biologically impossible to be a woman, a man to become a woman. So automatically it's going against, in a science class, I cannot teach biology, I have to teach ideology. right? Because that's ideology and not biology. So now my science students, I have to tell them and try to explain to them how is this possible, right? When they're seeing this gentleman walking around in a skirt and a wig and mustache and hair and lipstick, saying he's a woman, and telling the little children, call him Mrs. Brown instead of Mr. Brown or whatever. For the last 10 years, he was Mr. Brown all of a sudden. So there's some, but I'll tie that in again to the discrimination law. Again, he can use that to say that if the principal say to him, he can't come in here dressed like that, he's being discriminated against. And that would, again, he may be rightly justified under the law. So the law doesn't take into account all the other issues that come along with it, drag along with the LGBT agenda. They're going to push other things. So they just need the law to create an open door for a number of other issues to come through. And they'll sneak them right in as well.
Right.
And then the law is now in a tussle trying to defend itself.
That's really putting a lot of power in the hands of a small minority of persons that I do not think it's fair that the sociological and psychological impact of that behavior will have on the rest of the population. I don't think there's any other group, if you're going to talk discrimination, that is given that kind of largesse or treatment under the law. So it's really creating a serious disparity, don't you think?
Yes. I mean, people talk about this, why should we discriminate against LGBT? They're human beings and they're having their sexual differences. And it's a sin. Why are Christians having a problem with this sin and not adultery and fornication, and they're not raising these issues? Because the thief doesn't want the right to steal. And the fornicator doesn't run around with saying, I need the right to fornicate and adultery. No one keeps a big hurrah about these other sins. They feel sorry and they do it in the dark. Well, with this particular sin, the LGBT says, this sin is fine and it's okay and you should accept it. And therefore they keep a big hurrah and then ask, what's your problem with us? So that's the problem that we have there with the LGBT.
Wow. I want to read a part of the article that you wrote, Vincent, as a letter to the editor, The Nation, a couple of days ago. I mean, this language is strong. It's strong, Roger. This language is very, very, very strong. There's so many paragraphs here that I can read that it's amazing. If there are no male females, it means the so-called trans, for example, male who claims he's trapped in a female body, aren't born in the wrong body, and they can't change from a non-existent male to a non-existent female. Government wants you to vote yes to madness. Now that's a mild one. I'm going to read a stronger one. I'm going to read the one right at the beginning. Lesbian, quote-unquote, women who claim they changed to trans men's biological impossibility are now heterosexual because they are now men in love with women, but hold on to the argument that homosexuals are born that way and cannot ever become heterosexuals. Government are passing laws to support ludicrousness and compel citizens to agree or to be incarcerated. Men who claim to be transgender but do not have trans surgery are not accepted as trans by the LGBT sect because they still have testicles and may wish to have them waxed. I tell you, the language is strong. Vincent, you are going in on this, and I mean you are doing so by presenting realities, not just the problems that can exist within regular society, but even within the LGBTQI community itself. And I'm glad that you're able to unpack this. What else you see as a major problem? So you've pointed out that there's going to be a manipulation of law, there's going to be a manipulation of values, and there is going to be largesse given to one particular group. What else do you see, sir?
Well, so many things, because the LGBT has its hands, its tentacles in every institution in society. Religion, the health, medical institution, family institution, political, legal institution, educational institutions, and all these various institutions, you can find them there, and they've made inroads, serious inroads, in changing and pulling down these structures that holds up the society. So when we talk about the workplace, we can talk about education, we can talk about so many different areas that are being affected. And it's not just one, it's not just law, but it's every single one of these institutions that is problematic.
I see. You also mentioned, and I really want to go to Roger soon, I'm itching to get to Roger, but you also mentioned, Brother Vincent, that you see that this opens the door to so many other problems within the society. Many people have said, okay, so you grant freedom to the LGBTQI society for whatever practices they want to, then that opens the door to pedophilia, opens the door to bestiality, to incest. It opens the door to all these other forms of sexual behaviors that were listed before as perversions. Is that your line of argument as well, sir?
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
How can you say, again, the word discrimination is broad, and anti-discrimination laws is just broad. Therefore, and then you tie that to social justice, and justice for all, and fairness for all. If I can say then, just on this alone, that right now I feel I'm a woman, and I must be accepted as a woman, and therefore a law must be established to protect that idea. Roger says, I am a cat, right? Then he can simply ask for the law to protect his idea. You get it? And the next person can say, I am a 20-year-old, a 13-year-old girl who would like to work, so I change my age, right, to 20, so I can work. And the pedophilia can say, well, I must be accepted as a known practicing pedophilia in the workplace with children, because you will be discriminating against these people. That's what discrimination means, right? If you do not permit these people in the workplace, you see? So the law, how can the law...
Discrimination as they defined it.
Exactly, because they're all using the same term, discrimination. You get it? So we must be really discerning and discriminating. Discriminating is very important. The old definition, right? To know the difference between something that's good, bad, right, wrong, and you know, what's useful and what's not useful, what's a utility. So we need to know these things, and that's discriminatory, and that's very important. And we do have to discriminate. Name one person on the face of this planet who do not discriminate, and do not discriminate every day. We discriminate every time, but we got to be very careful with this particular group. They do not just want an opportunity to, you know, to cohabitate a man with a man. They want way more. There is an agenda afoot that's been in place with many other countries and nations who've established the laws, and then you see the full agenda being exposed over time. And just to get back to the issue, the article that I wrote there, the confliction between biology and what is supposed to be socially constructivism, right? So they would argue on one hand, and this is where it gets confusing, and I'll finish.
It's okay.
How can you, they say that we're born a slate, a clean slate. There's, you're not born a male, you're not born a female, you have no sex. All right?
You're born neutral.
You're born neutral, so to speak.
Wow.
If that is the case, then how can I change my sex if I don't have a sex?
I tell you, this guy has a quick intellect here. Come on.
Yeah, how can I change a
keep
sex
going.
that doesn't exist?
Right.
to another non-existing sex.
Okay.
And that's one of the arguments there that you were reading.
Yeah, I think that's one of the contradictions you pointed out.
Right.
That if you say it's not binary, sexuality is not binary. We are not male, born biologically male, biologically female, and those two are not those two binary aspects are not fundamental. That you can be, there's this, I suppose, gay gene that predisposes you, even though you have been socialized as a male, that you're really mentally, I suppose, psychologically a female, and therefore you should be able to go from one to the next. But you can't have it both ways, can you?
Correct.
You can't dismantle the binary concept and still want to transition from one to the next. So that's a wonderful, that's a good argument of logic here. What I love about this today is that you see many people see us as just believers, that all we want to do is to quote Leviticus 23 and say that this is an abomination, but they do not understand that there are serious psychological, sociological, economic even outcomes that will affect us if we do not pay attention to our morality across the board. And that's why we have persons like Brother Vincent Smith, who is using his intellect to mount these wonderful arguments that we can look at it and not be bamboozled or be tricked by using the word discrimination, but to be able to understand how it is being used under the law, and it can be detrimental to us. We have Brother Roger Marshall. Brother Roger, what is on your mind in relation to these issues? We are seeing, as Brother Vincent is speaking on the law as it relates to discrimination in the workplace, but we've also been seeing, I don't know if you've seen the discussion on the Welcome Stamp Act, and what is your take on that? I believe you've reacted to that in the press as well. So come on, give me your reaction.
Okay. Well, what is happening right now is, as Senator Caswell has said, you know, we are seeing a move afoot to push into the back door, you know, what we know is an affront to our Family Law Act, you know, because our Family Law Act states what a family is. And defines it within the biblical context of a man and a woman. But with the whole welcome stamp issue and trying to allure persons who may be involved in same-sex marriages to take up root here in our country, we are seeing that the Family Law Act is being tinkered with to allow such persons, you know, to take up residence and maybe receive all the benefits that would be received by, you know, standard families, as we know in our countries. Again, based on what we understand to be a family, going back to the Bible, because I often say when we face with these complex issues, because people will say, well, there's so many different religions, there's so many different worldviews. How do we know what is true? And I often say, let us reset. Let us go back to the beginning, because that is where it all starts. What has God designed? Okay, the whole issue of family. Because if really and truthfully, this whole warfare boils down to either God is the moral governor of the universe and sets the rules of right and wrong, or man is the moral governor because of evolution, and so we can change the rules to suit ourselves. But if life is the product of evolutionary change processes and our societies are a result of evolutionary change processes, okay, when we look at evolution, evolution is a dog-eat-dog system. There's no respect. It's who can mount to the top can survive.
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. So what is so wrong, therefore, if that is the driving philosophy? What is so wrong, therefore, with persons in the church trying to clobber to the top and stamp down the gay activists, because that's evolution at work. Okay, so what I'm saying is that persons who are saying that are crying foul when we as Christians say that a particular lifestyle is wrong. Okay, they're arguing their point not from a theistic perspective. They're not seeing that God sets the rules. Man sets the rules. So if man sets the rules, anybody can set the rule, okay, and we're free to fight. So there's no reason then for some person to say you're being unfair, you're being unkind, because there's no kindness in evolution. There's no kindness. It's just a dog-eat-dog world.
I see. But
Right?
of course, that's not what Christians are attempting to do.
Yes.
What I hear you say, Brother Roger, is that the ideology that is driving this particular agenda is one that is against the tenets of the Bible, against God, against Christian principles, upon which most of the very societies that we live in are based, especially in the West. And therefore you're saying that it is an ideologically driven practice.
Yeah. Agenda.
Okay, so in other words, to understand this, we have to go down below the arguments at the surface and look at the underlying philosophy.
Correct.
It's the philosophy that is driving the argument.
Correct.
I understand what you're saying very, very clearly there. Let me go back to this and see what started this whole foray. There was a welcome stamp visa put in place by government, and according to the Nation News, it came under heavy criticism from the international and local lesbian LGBT community. And here's the piece that really drove it. So now we can come to this philosophy we're talking about, that we have one of the lowest COVID affected areas in the entire world. So you can come and you can work in beautiful Barbados, and you can do so for a whole year, you and your family. But the problem came when family was defined. Now, the nation certainly quotes and says that a family subsists, quoting the law, subsists by law. Now, the Prime Minister said that this Welcome Visa Stamp Act is according to the legal framework that Barbados have. Now, if it's according to the legal framework, I would imagine, gentlemen, that it will have to go according to law. Correct. And the laws of Barbados says that marriage, according to the Family Law Act, is between a man, biological male, and a woman, biological female. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The pushback came from Rohan locally. Well, first of all, let me deal with where the foray seemed to have started. There is this comedian, actress, radio personality, media personality called Crystal West, who tweeted, quote, "If you work remotely and make at least $50,000 and aren't in a gay marriage, Barbados will allow you and your family to flee this place and live there." You can clearly see what kind of comment that is. This is not a serious challenge to anything. This is a social media comment to her very large following. That was picked up in the social media. And because of that, we see that our government crumbled to the critiques of people that don't even live in Barbados. We are passing a law, introducing an instrument that will benefit the country of Barbados in line with the laws of the people of Barbados. And yet immediately, as soon as this community began to protest, the government changed the legislation, changed the wording. This is what you were referring to, that Caswell Franklin on the floor of the Senate protested.
Correct.
Because he saw the original bill and was willing to debate that in the Senate, on the Senate floor. The day of the debate, the document was changed. The language was changed.
Yeah.
And this is what gives rise to the debate, because listen to Ms. Rohan Mohammed, which ties what you're saying with what Vincent is saying. LGBTQ people who live here with legislation that criminalizes their identities and fails to protect them from discrimination deserves to be heard and met with respect from the state as well. So clearly she's seen that describing marriage as between a man and a woman according to the laws of Barbados is discriminating against those who are not falling under that designation.
Yeah.
And so you see where the problem lies. It's the use of language here. That's where the problem lies. What do you think about that, gentlemen?
Well, for one, first of all, yes, our law has a criterion of what a family is.
Okay.
A family is a male and a female, a man and a woman. I asked the question, where does that criterion come from? Did man just invent that criterion? We know that criterion comes from God. That's why I said we have to go back to base. Where do we get the moral? Where do we get morality from? Why is it wrong to steal? Because I say so? Because you say so? Well, if in a country, other countries, they don't see stealing as wrong, who can they say it is wrong? Who can they say that they are wrong for saying that stealing is not wrong? We know that murder is wrong. Why is it wrong? Because I say so. So why is a family defined as a man and a woman? Why does our law say so? We know that our country is founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And that comes out of the scriptures. But it's not because somebody wrote it in a book. It's because it's a fact going back to Genesis, to creation. So family is a male and female Adam and Eve. You cannot get away from that. I don't matter how much you argue. That is a fact.
So it's not only theological, but you're also, I believe, alluding to the fact that it's also biological.
Biological,
and I think this is what
historical.
Vincent was saying as well.
Correct.
Because what you are having now is an ideological construct. So in other words, you're inventing agenda that is not rooted biologically.
Correct.
And therefore, because now you construct that, that is coming up against what is biologically so and has exists, of course, from time and memorial.
So it's a battle for truth. What is truth? It's a battle for truth. What is truly a family? So for me, for anyone to come and say, well, a family can be a man and a woman, that is against the criteria of what a family is. So therefore, you have a right, our nation has a right to discriminate because there is a criterion here. If you don't meet the criterion, you don't meet the bill. Simple. You don't qualify. It's just as if I went for a job and I didn't have the qualifications. I do not qualify. You can discriminate against me because I don't have the qualifications and I will have to look elsewhere. So that is what it really boils down to. So I don't need to tinker with and change to appease and please you. You don't meet the criteria.
So why are we doing it? Why is the government of Barbados capitulating, a sovereign nation capitulating to comedians who live overseas, to persons who have made a choice as to how their lifestyles would be? As the article also has an appeal by Mr. Wickham, who says he's appalled at this language, even though as a political scientist you must know that these are the laws of Barbados. And the very fact that he went to France to be married and could not be married here, how then does he become appalled? How then is he enfeebled and dismayed, Bishop Paul means, by this? I find that curious. So Vincent, let me ask you, why do you think our government capitulated to this particular pushback from persons abroad, like Dustin Delaney, like Tomlinson, like Alexa Hoffman, and other people within the gay community that have been making strident demands and appeals in the affairs of Barbados. Why?
Well, first of all, maybe Peter is being a drama queen and just behaving that way because he knows better. We know he knows better. It is not unusual for politicians and people at the highest level of society to capitulate to the LGBT. The LGBT is a force to be reckoned with. It has brought politicians to their knees. They've brought governments to their knees. They have bent United States and many other countries have fall in line at their demands. So they operate sometimes outside of the law, and no justice is served in favor of the other people that they may mistreat. So an LGBT group or person would use tactics like threatening people's lives, blackmail. They would cry victim. They would, use a lot of slapstick language and words now as clickbait to get people's attention while they're crying the victim. So people become empathetic to them and their cause and their plight. So they will use every language, every word in the book, minority, abuse, all of this, so that they would win the favor of individuals, plus using other severe tactics like threatening people's lives, threatening their jobs, threatening their families,
but
giving them multiple phone calls and so on.
I could understand that, Vincent, if they say, well, Roger and Vincent and Leacock are criticizing us, so let's see if we can get him fired. Let's put some pressure on Roger here and cut down his clients. He can't do business in the workplace.
Yes.
Okay, I could understand that. They can try to say that I am homophobic or I myopic or I'm anachronistic, all those wonderful terms you use. But my question still remains in the 5 minutes we have left. Why is a government is not an individual like us that can fall under that kind of pressure. Why would our government, with its large majority, with its wonderful acclaim as how well it's functioning, why would our government cave in to this? Why?
I'm not sure if I could answer that, specifically our government, but like I said, in general, many capitulate and they become acquiescent out of fear for this particular organization and its agenda.
What is the fallout? I mean, when you say out of fear,
well,
what's
for
the
example,
fallout?
many of them are funded by great philanthropists. And large billions of dollars and so on are given in funding these organizations, this particular organization. Members of this organization are within government institutions. They are politicians who have relationships with and histories and backgrounds and so on, and are committed to supporting because their son, their daughter, or they themselves, maybe secretly have skeletons in the closet, have supported this organization over the years. And therefore, you would find these people in their positions are bowing to this particular organization.
Well, I think that's extremely dangerous for our country. I think one of the arguments that I've heard, especially Dustin Delaney, who is partly a well-heeled lawyer that is operative in the Caribbean, making the point in an article I have here that we're going to miss billions of dollars. The LGBTQI community have billions of dollars, and as a country that relies on tourism, the tourist dollar of this community is too huge to miss. So the question must be, Are we willing to sell our birthright for a mess of pottage? There is a downside to tourism, you know. We are already seeing the problem of over-reliance on tourism. Our people are our greatest resource. If we make tourism our all saving, our save-all industry, we are putting ourselves in major trouble. What about the downside of tourism? What about the low-paying jobs that people get trapped in, and one disaster causes that all to go away, as we are seeing right now? What about the fact that tourism also leaves large sociological and psychological and even economic problems for the host country to clean up? For example, we are talking about these wonderful tour ships that we want to see Barbados become the hub of. But there's also much talk about the amount of dumping of plastics and other waste that tourist ships leave in the ocean. There are effects from these things. So we can't just grab at a dollar and lose our soul. I think that we are in a situation here we've got to be careful. And I'm very concerned that our labor law is going in this direction. Gentlemen, I'm concerned. In our last few minutes here, what would you say to the Barbadian Christian community first, and to the wider Christian community, that we need to do about this road that the government has turned us on? What should we do about this?
Well, you know, the whole LGBT agenda can be seen as a juggernaut. It's a mighty force. But my mind goes back to David and Goliath, a mighty giant, you know, that had the children, the armies of Israel scared and cowering. But David recognized and understood who God was, and he asked, is there not a cause? Right? How dare this uncircumcised Philistine, you know, threaten the armies of the living God and defy God? So in the face of this juggernaut of the LGBT agenda, we as Christians cannot cower. Okay, we have to stand up for truth. Is there not a cause? We have to speak to power. We have to stand up for God's truth and declare what God has declared from the very beginning, whether men will hear or forbear. Right? That is what God told the prophet Ezekiel: set his face like a flint and declare his truth to rebellious Israel, whether they will hear or forbear. And that's what we have to do. We have to declare God's truth, argue it accurately, pronounce it boldly, okay? Whether men will hear or forbear, because there's truth to stand up for.
Okay, we have a forum here, but how do you practically say to Christians? I mean, what do? Do we call brass tacks? Do we write letters? Do we petition government? Do we speak to our representatives? Do we write the Prime Minister? Do we call in on the people's business? Do we march in the street? I mean, what are some of the practical
all those things we need to do. You know, we need to let our voice be heard. We cannot be silent. Silence is acquiesce and giving in. You know, saying it's okay. No, we have to be vocal as whatever your particular talent is. You may not find yourself, I can't write. Okay, you can probably march. You can encourage your pastor or something to have discussions, to get out in the community and to do things in community centers or whatever can be done must be done to help people to see the truth, because it's about declaring the truth. Right? That is what it's about.
I totally agree with Roger. I would just say, to be clear, a homophobe is someone who refused to believe the lie, so refuse to believe the lie. There are Christians who would argue that, why are you using this gospel platform to be discussing a distraction? This is not the gospel. This is not what church is all about. Church is about discipling people and so on. And these are topics that are a waste of time, and they're not spiritual topics and so on. So there are many Christians that hold that position. I would think that we're really just wasting our time here. But we do live in the world. COVID didn't bypass Christians. Many Christians died. Many are affected by the things within the world. We live in a community in which we are supposed to be the light and the salt of. We are not supposed to be the light and salt of Christians, but non-Christians. We have a duty, and we are called to speak to the world and give the world the correct lens to look through to see what morality and things are all about. Not the moral eyes and the secular eyes, but to look through the spiritual eyes and see what's happening in the world. Tell the world what is really going on in the spiritual background. This, in the physical realm, is just a manifestation of the spiritual realm. The things that are happening there are manifesting through the flesh. And people are seeing this, but not understand. Christians are not understanding that relationship. And therefore, they're myopic a little bit, and they're only seeing fleshly things. So understanding that this is critical. A Christian can't run from this. Within Christian homes, their children are coming to them and saying, Mom and Dad, little Joey is saying, I want to be a girl. What do you say? Oh, that doesn't come under the heading of gospel message and blah, blah. I don't know how to answer you. Let me hit you with the Bible, Leviticus 18 and 20. See if that will work. No. We must understand every social issue that is relevant to the society and teach the society the correct view of how they should be looking at. So we should be telling the government what they're doing wrong on these moral issues and these other issues, and directing them from God's perspective.
Wonderful, wonderful. If you've just tuned in, you missed a fantastic discussion from two wonderfully able men of God who have articulated the issue that is rife in Barbados right now. We want to encourage you to tune in with us on Midday Manna. I'm going to invite these gentlemen back again because we have to be able to understand. I would like to just add one thing. We've got to educate ourselves. We've got to know what the issues are. We have to know what the arguments are. And I'm appealing to every pastor to be on standby because we are going to mobilize our movement and to be able to address this issue because it's coming to a church near you. You have been listening to Midday Manna from the First Baptist Church, Bridgetown, Barbados. And my wonderful guests have been Vincent Smith, educator and apologist, and Brother Roger Marshall of Project Probe. And we hope that by the grace of God, you will follow us constantly. Follow us on our Facebook page. Give us your likes. Give us your comments, even if you didn't agree with our position, and share us with your friends. We look forward to being with you again, and may God bless you, and may God bless our nation, Barbados. Thank you. And God bless you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Let your manna fall from heaven. Shower down your word from up above. Grace and truth are what we're craving. Manifest your blessings and your love. Here with your midday man.